Hello, everyone. Hi. Happy Friday. Thank you so much to everyone joining us online and those who are listening to the recording afterwards. We are very happy you're here, and we're excited for today's conversation. Um, as our unique year is rolling along, that's the best way to put it, is one of one this year so far. Our mission of bringing in impactful entrepreneurs continues. And I think today we hit it out of the ballpark, and we have a wonderful guest joining us. Holly Jones brings a wealth of experience as the president of MaxCare Lean Group and Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning. And we couldn't be more pleased to have her. So, Holly, thank you for joining us today. And Angela, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Justin and Holly. Welcome. As we've spent a couple of minutes getting warmed up here a little bit, but I'm thrilled to have you as a guest on this series. Holly, I think if you remember this story differently, please feel free to jump in. But we were introduced by a mutual acquaintance in the marketplace who continues to be a friend of both of ours. Certainly a resourceful person. And you had some questions about financing you were already engaged in. We connected, and then I think we've stayed connected ever since that. And if my timing and my research isn't wrong, that goes back to like 2016, 2017. And then the rest has been history. But I want to talk specifically about the spark behind your company, because a lot of people who may not know you or know your business don't understand this is a multi-decade, more than 5 decades of success in this market, now a second generation of ownership. And it's such a small percentage of Canadian businesses that get to this stage. You employ a lot of people, you bring a lot of value into the community. Tell me about that initial spark in your family for starting this company.
Yeah. So thanks again. Thanks for having me, Angela. And I do remember meeting you in 2016 when we started doing business, but you might not remember. I actually saw you speak at a women's mentorship event probably about a year before that, and was really like just admired your story and what you had to say. So I already was kind of had a little bit sneak peek at kind of who you were, and kind of felt like the alignment in terms of just who you were. So
Values show up everywhere, right?
that's exactly it. Yeah. So as you mentioned, our company's MaxCare Lean Group's kind of the umbrella. We have Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning as well as Page the Cleaner. So Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning, Alberta Carpet Cleaning actually was kind of the initial business that my parents got into in the October of 1981. So the story in our family, I laugh at this because I think my dad makes it sound like my mom was really happy, and I kind of imagine she might not have been quite as happy at the beginning.
Yeah.
But they were they lived in Abbotsford in BC. My mom was about 6 months pregnant with my older brothers. They had a 4-year-old and then had a second kid on the way in the form of my brother. And my dad came home, and he was a salesman, and he put some papers on the table and he said, "Honey, we've won the lottery." And she said, "Tell me more. I didn't know we entered." And he said, we're going to move to Edmonton, and we're going to become a partner in this carpet cleaning business. It's not doing so well right now, which is why we're getting such a deal. But I just know it's going to be great. And so they packed up in very short order. That my dad says, my mom said, "Okay, I'll get the boxes," and started packing. I think she probably had a few more questions, but that was what kind of started us specifically in this business. I think my dad always had a bit of an entrepreneurial bent. So actually, when he was in high school, one of the courses he says he did pass was a business course where he actually made a business plan for a dry cleaner, and just thought, well,
Wow.
People will always need
Foreshadowing.
things, right, to be cleaned. And so this would be a great business. So I think when a few years later, it would have been 6 or 7 years later, when he got that opportunity in the form of a carpet cleaning business, he was kind of like, well, cleaning, different stuff,
Close.
but close enough. And it kind of just aligned with this idea that he had quite young. So I feel like it was a little bit of destiny that led him down that path.
your mom saying, I'll get the boxes. I think you're right. I intuit that there was more behind it, but still, you ended up in Edmonton, and Abbotsford is beautiful. Edmonton is also beautiful, but quite different. And then you came along, and I know there's 5 children in the family.
Mhm.
What was that experience like growing up as the child of entrepreneurial parents?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I did come along, but by that time, so I was born in Winnipeg, 15 months after my brother, and then my next brother was born in Surrey, about 14 months later. And then my youngest brother was born back here in Alberta. So
You're
there was a little bit
nomads, all of
there's
you.
a lot that kind of happened on that journey. They ended up doing actually a bunch of different locations and moving around in that. That's a big story. What it was like, boy, like my parents were just so hardworking. And I think like my earliest memories here were still in the same building that we've been in since I was 6 years old. And we have a room now that's now our boardroom, and it's nice and painted and it has a table in it. But I remember being sick and staying home, well, not staying home from school, staying away from school, but being brought to the office and sleeping on a one of those scratchy Hudson's Bay blankets
Oh, yeah.
on the floor in that back room when it was still full of shelves and boxes. It was kind of a storage room. So I mean, we were always kind of in the business. When I was probably 10 or 11, that's my first memory of working in the business. So my parents had lost some admin staff right around Christmas and were just scrambling to do payroll and get all of the things done. And I remember being here photocopying and folding checks and stuffing envelopes and kind of filing in whatever way, I guess, whatever capacity a 10 or 11-year-old can contribute. So it was just a part of kind of it was never there was never really a separation between work and kind of our experience growing up. It was just all in all the time.
It's interesting because a lot of people, if they haven't, whatever your experience is your whole experience because it's embedded in your day to day. It's not like you had a parent that was working in a job 8 to 5 and coming home and there for the weekends. You had parents that probably work 7 days a week. Like considering what you just said about setting up locate different locations everywhere and that need of, well, we can't just take a day off and there's no sick days when
Yeah.
you're running a business. This is so you and your family, did you always believe someday you would be involved in the business? Did you guys do other work along the way? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I absolutely believed I would not be working in our business. So, um, funny enough, when I was probably 17, I'd been working kind of as a teenager, just doing a little bit of admin and kind of getting a little bit of experience in customer service and stuff. And I just decided it wasn't for me.
Mhm.
So I did not ask my dad's help. I kind of went behind his back and got a job at a restaurant. I knew he knew the owner, but I didn't want him to get me that job. So I went like, I just want to go do a thing for myself. And I was convinced that was it, like that I was not coming back to the businesses. Sort of the exhausting side of family business is that all on all the time just felt like you couldn't it also sometimes felt like you couldn't escape it. So the dinner table was work and everything was work. And I actually my husband, we started dating when I was 16, and he came from the opposite end of the spectrum, from parents who were like in very very kind of shift work, kind of very prescribed rules. It was very split between work and home. And when he kind of came into my family, he was like, this is so
You guys are
dysfunctional.
crazy.
Yeah. So I was like, I felt like he was like my life, my buoy to kind of get me out of this a little. And at one point, all my brothers, so I have 4 brothers, all of them were working in the business, and their significant others, like they had girlfriends who were working in the business as well. And only myself and my, at that time, boyfriend were not working in the business. And so I just was kind of done with it. I was exhausted by it when I was young. I went to university, got a business degree. I thought I was going to go into science, kind of meandered business pulled me in, and I thought, well, I'm going to go into marketing, and that sounds fun. I'll work in an agency. It will be this fun experience of business that does not seem like the experience that I grew up in. And when I got out of university, I was tired of hospitality. I was still working in restaurants. And my dad said, you could just like come work for me for do some projects,
Uh-oh.
like put your university learning to work, show me what you learned, and just come do that while you look for this marketing job that you want. And original plan was 6 months, and it will be 20 years in June. So
Wow.
yeah, I came and never went, but certainly that was not the plan.
So what was sticky about that for you when you decided to, well, sure, I'll do this for a bit, but I'm I'm leaving, I'm going, I'm just stepping in for a minute. What kept you there?
Yeah. I think my dad was really tricky. So he knows me really well, obviously. And in fact, him and I don't work well together. So there was some headbutting as I came in and started to look around and do some projects. I'm very vocal and I spoke up about what I saw, and I didn't let it go if I thought that things weren't how I thought that they should be. But I think what he did was he created space for me to just exercise like curiosity and just to dig into a lot of different areas, a lot of variety. My family has a lot of neurodivergence. And so we have a lot of energy, but distractibility. And he gave me a petri dish where I could just like grow and like just anything I was curious about. There was no closed door. And so very young, like I came into the business when I was 22, he would just see me go into an area and then he would get out of the way and he would kind of clear the way to kind of allow me to, whether it was in our accounting area, one of my projects was exploring, did we need a new chart of accounts, and kind of like some very boring administrative work. But he would see like my gears turning and see me kind of digging into something like that, and he would just let me kind of have access to whatever I needed to have access. And over time, that access grew into authority and ability to kind of direct those areas. And he kind of pulled back as we had conflict. He pulled back a little bit, and I don't think he ever intended to kind of retire when he did, which he was probably only about 55. But he just went, well, one of us can be here. Ultimately, we both have a lot of ideas and a lot of strong feelings about those ideas, and we're not meshing with that. And so he kind of just slowly pulled away and just allowed me to lean in more and more. So just, I think, gave me the opportunity to learn things that would have been very difficult for me to get working in someone else's business.
I I marvel at the fact that your dad, even if it wasn't by design, there was enough self-awareness in that action of saying we can't both be the rulers of this roost. And I'm using the word rulers in a very non-authoritarian way, but sort of say somebody, if the buck has got to stop somewhere, it's very difficult for it to stop two places. And particularly since he was sort of that initial founder,
Yeah.
there must have been times where you felt, and I've encountered this question in our own business. Well, how will it work when all the people that are used to reporting to you want to keep reporting to you because they feel like they're losing that relationship? How did you two manage that transition, the relationship transition with your people? Because I know you've got a lot of long tenured employees. How
Yeah.
did you manage through that?
Not well, I would say. I actually had this conversation the other day, so I'm really, really privileged to have a business partner now named Dana Ratcliffe, and she has worked in our businesses for over 30 years. And eventually, when we did form MaxCare Lean Group, which is a partnership of four owners, myself, my two older brothers, and Dana, we kind of went like, we can't do this. It doesn't make sense for us to do this without her. She's been a part of the journey for so long. So by the time that I kind of came back, I had some kids and had some time off. And by the time I came back, kind of in the role as president, which would have been 2013, my dad had really, like, he wasn't in the day to day. He wasn't really overseeing a lot of people directly, but Dana was his general manager of Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning, which is our main business. And I would say that we're very lucky that she had so much grace with us, because I think we didn't do a great job of just making sure that she, as kind of his right-hand person, really, that we transitioned that relationship well. He didn't even tell her I was the president.
Oh,
yes. It was just.
How did she find out? Now I'm really curious.
Like, I had been on maternity leave, and I remember we went out for lunch, and I had my list. I had my notebook with my list of demands, and I was like, okay, I'm coming back, but things are going to be official. It's not going to be like the unofficial, like I'm in charge of things, but I don't really have a title except one that I made up for myself. Like, right. I need to be the president of the company. I'm going to clear your stuff out of this office that I kind of squat in when you're mostly not here, but it's not your office anymore. It's my office. And here's how it needs to go. And his one condition back to me was, great. I think this makes sense, but if you're going to be the president of one of my companies, you need to be the president of both. And so our dry cleaner, Paige the Cleaner, where it was not in a great spot, there was a lot of kind of challenging things going on in that business. I ignorantly kind of went, okay, yeah, that sounds like I could do it. But then Dana was kind of like, I came back from mat leave. She knew that. And I had kind of been in charge of our admin, our marketing, and kind of been John's voice. John is my dad, his voice in our business. But he just didn't show up at all anymore. And he hadn't showed up a lot for a while before that, but he just kind of wasn't there at all. And so it was, I don't recall exactly, but I think there was some phone calls where she was kind of like, hey, what is Holly up to? Like, is this legitimate? So it was rough. I would not recommend it to anyone.
If you could do that over again, what would you do differently?
Oh, man. Oh, I think that's so tough, because I'm one of those people who's like, well, could I have done anything differently? I think certainly now, any business that we go into, I feel like transparency and like thinking about communicating things repeatedly and in different ways to people is really important. I think being intentional about that and kind of managing a transition like a leadership transition, by just including everyone in the conversation early and often, I think is something that we should have done. And I think we've learned that lesson. And now when we have had other leadership transitions in our business, even if it's a title change, because I think we've just realized that sometimes we change titles because it's like, well, people have kind of grown out of a spot and they've actually been in this other spot. And that's really what happened to me, was like, look, I was signing things and I was making the calls and I was managing cash flow and I was overseeing kind of the connection between the support aspects, the marketing aspects, and the operational aspects. But it hadn't been named that. And I think we've really recognized that it isn't really necessarily about a shift in what you do, but what you're called. That gives people questions, it gives people uncertainty, and you need to get ahead of that and plan to just tell people proactively rather than kind of letting them backfill that with whatever story seems to fit for them from their perspective.
Nature hates a vacuum. And so as people, we crave certainty, right?
Yeah.
We crave the ability to be on autopilot because it's less exhausting. Having to figure things out every day is exhausting. And so we want to be in a path that we know that there's no potholes and I'm not going to trip over a rock. So I think that's such a great insight. But I also agree with what I think you were getting to, which is it is really difficult to criticize yourself for not doing things a different way when you didn't know differently. It's important to be able to learn from that and grow and then be intentional about what you're doing going forward. But that doesn't mean you're not going to trip over something else, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
What
100%.
what would you say, insights, and talking about communication and transparency within the team? I would ask if your husband, if you said, "Hey, we're moving to, I don't know, Yellowknife to open up," would he say, "I'm packing the boxes"?
Um, I think he'd have a few. I think he'd have a few more questions. Although if it was like we're moving to a place where you can fish and ski and do this list of things, he'd have less questions. So I feel like
Right.
the place makes a difference. The weather of Abbotsford to the cold prairies, and my mom was a prairie girl. She came from Manitoba, so she was eyes wide open about what that shift would mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that he would the story would be quite as clean.
Well, clearly it worked out in the long run because doing that, raising a family, running that business successfully, and enticing the family to stay in the business.
Yeah.
Lots of families, the kids are like, I don't want that life. I want a life where I get actual vacations and I know the paycheck and there's the bank's not going to be calling me asking me to re-inject capital in the business. How did
Hmm.
your family navigate this? Because some members have been in the business, not all the
Hmm.
members are still in the business. How do
Yeah.
you navigate the difference between those who are and those who aren't, and sort of have a this is family, and they're and some people are not more special because they're in the business because it's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing a pattern in my own words. How I would do it now versus how it happened.
Yeah,
Probably we would do it better now because we know better. Yeah, that's a tricky thing. So there was a period probably, so about 13 years ago, where all five of us, all five of like me and my four brothers were all in one or the other of our businesses. And it was looking like we were kind of like exploring this idea of what does a five-way ownership with the five siblings look like. And I think there was a moment where we all hoped that that would work out, and we thought that it could. But I mean, the challenges of business kind of just didn't lead to that outcome, and there's definitely some feelings that were hurt along the way, and I that's probably my biggest regret is the way that we did sometimes handle those things wasn't great, and we've since I think sort of processed that and gotten to a better place. um but man, I don't think there was ever a world where any of us realistically were going to work a regular job. So even my two brothers who are not in the business, they're both entrepreneurs. They both have their own
really.
businesses and are successful in their own right. And still a lot of the time that we spend together and that we kind of connect on is around business, but just a sort of a more broad connection sort of between our different businesses and what's happening as opposed to all working in one business. I think looking back, and not my parents never forced us to get together, but they did kind of pull us together and kind of go like, hey, the future is probably a five-way future. So get in a room with a family business advisor and see what that looks like. And we learned about three circles and people, owners and managers and family members. And we kind of learned the theory of how to navigate that. So I think they really tried to equip us with the tools to do it well. But we were young and all very strong-willed and all have a lot of opinions, and so it was tricky. How it is now, I'd say we learned as we went that you couldn't, there's no redos, but we learned that you could learn how to navigate the next situation better as a result of maybe some of the mistakes that we made. So I mean, you'd have to ask my two younger brothers who aren't in the business if they're kind of satisfied with how things ended up. But I would say over probably the last 6 years, kind of approaching the time when we actually did the deal. And since we've done the deal, we really, really worked on being as transparent and open as possible and really just making sure nothing was left unsaid and no questions were unanswered as my parents did their estate planning and as we kind of put together this deal. So we did it in probably a pretty untraditional way, in that we really wanted to focus on bringing it from being kind of a pure family business into a more professional kind of way of operating. And that was a part of bringing in our non-family owner. And so we all, like the four of us owners, have done this in the same way. The family and non-family have been treated the same. We've bought our businesses from my parents. We were transparent with my brothers who aren't involved, as that sort of started to take shape, so that nothing would be a surprise and they wouldn't be kind of scrambling after the fact to process what happened.
Wow, that's a lot of very strong work that you were doing together, and even working through the difficulties. It sounds like the family is knitted together in a really good way now. There's nothing about life that means hardship isn't full of learning and growth, but you have to be open to the growth and the learning. You could go through a bad time and still never change. So kudos to you for seeing that opportunity. And Dana, having joined into a family business, because it is a barrier for leaders as well, potentially joining into family businesses where they say, how can I participate in this business when I'm the outside party? So such an intelligent way for you to set that business up for a potential next generation of success. I mean, if you're in your second 50-year stint here now, I wish I was going to be around at the 100-year mark to kind of see where you guys were at that point in time. I have some questions about where you are now, because over the last number of years, I think one of the things that you engaged in and embraced was the sense of we need a common business philosophy or platform from which to launch. Yeah. And you went on this incredible journey, and I know you've been practitioners of lean. You have invested heavily in this process. Tell me about, a snapshot of where the business was, decisions being made, evaluating success and gaps, compared to where you are now, and how lean has changed that experience for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we have enough time to say all the things that I have to say about lean. You might have to put the hook.
We need another podcast series.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a reader, so I'm always reading a book about something. I have piles of books on my desk, and I always had something. And when I originally read a book about lean, I have to say, I kind of went, this sounds good, but it kind of went a little, we're a service industry, first of all, and a lot of the examples they use in those kinds of books are manufacturing, big companies too, like Toyota or Pratt and Whitney or Boeing. Yeah. And so it can be hard to kind of draw those lessons down. But when I read my second book on lean a few years after that, and had moved and had it was a much simpler kind of way of packaging it. It's a book called 2-Second Lean, and is not a textbook, much simpler, sort of from a small, medium business perspective, and very hands-on and very sort of agnostic of industry. It's just like something clicked in my brain. And literally, I was like, I have that story of no, it actually happened this way, like my parents' founding story, where I was sitting in my office and I downloaded it on my phone and I was reading it, and I was just we were not having a good year. There was a lot of kind of just conflict in management, and we weren't satisfied with the results of the company. I mean, we've always had such great people with such great intentions delivering great service to our customers, but behind the scenes, being able to deliver that at scale and continue to grow was becoming a really big struggle, just to manage all those things. And especially in the absence of a founder and me having a very different personality from my dad, I feel like that also contributed, where he was kind of intuitively keeping these things going in a way that I just was not. And so I got probably 10 minutes into this book, and I was just like, I see it now. I see what that other book was trying to say. And it was this epiphany moment. And one of the things the author says in that book, he says, fix what bugs you. Like, lean is about fixing what bugs you. It's nothing bigger than that.
That's pretty simple.
Yeah, like it's like, but fix it for real. Don't just make it better this time, but put in place a system or an actual improvement that means you don't have this problem again. And I'm still doing those kinds of 2-second fixes all the time. Like this morning, I needed to find our corporate access number, and I'm searching for articles of incorporation to find this number. And then I'm like, put it in I put it in a secure note. So now I just like click into my system and grab it, and it takes 2 seconds where it was taking me maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute, but that fix what bugs you and just smooths those little things. So when I read that, I was going like, this is the answer. I just saw it as like all these different kinds of challenges that we were facing. And I went, this is the answer to all the challenges. It's not just one of them. And my brother at that time, Jeremy, yep. He was our accounting manager, and his desk was right outside my office. And I went out and I was like, Jeremy, like, this is the thing. It's lean. And I printed my very first improvement. I printed what bugs you on a piece of paper, and I put it on a bulletin board in our office because I was like, everyone's going to be so excited about this. And he was not excited. He looked at me and was like, oh my gosh, Holly, eye roll moment.
Seriously?
Like, he was like this again. Like, I'm like the girl who cried wolf. Like, every book I read, I get really excited. And I'm like, everyone, I want to tell you everything about it. This is how it's going to be so transformational. And this time I was right, but it took me a little while to get people to kind of like get out of kind of the flavor of the week, get out of the crisis mode that I think that we have found ourselves in, and just slow down and go, no, like, this is really going 5 steps further back and fixing the root cause, as opposed to just firefighting all of these things. So I would say, like, if from a customer perspective, if you used us 5 or 6 years ago, we started in 2019, I think you probably had a really good experience, and it was like all the same things that we're doing now, we were doing then. Not all the same things. I think we've increased our value when it comes to better communication and some systemization on that. But generally speaking, we're sending a good human to you to provide a great service, and trying to be as good communicators in delivering that service as possible. But I would say the likelihood of something going wrong because of a systems failure or just a ball being dropped was significantly higher back then than it is today, because we have just way more process built out. We just have way more things that are standardized. We have way more of our leadership energy, I think, being focused on our people and developing our people and increasing the value of the service that we're offering, versus firefighting, and manually managing things that just are so, now in retrospect, it's like so simple to manage today. Our fleet maintenance, our supply ordering and management, our scheduling and staffing things, like, just things that, like, any business that's scaling and growing, you can't handle it the same when you've got 5 people as when you have 10 people as when you have 20. And like in this case, between our two businesses, we have 80 or 85 people. And so I feel like that was just something that allowed us to get out of producing a really good product by intensely working in the business and keeping our hands on everything, and now producing a really good product or a really good service with a much more intentional, hands-off approach, where we're working with building people to produce those results and supporting them with systems.
How much change was required in the mindset? Because when you're a business that, and I've lived this as well, and we're constantly evolving and shifting through this, and most business owners I know have to do this iteration multiple times, as you've reflected, as the business gets larger and communication changes occur. how do you disseminate information? What's the informal communication protocol versus, what the business leadership might say, well, we've got all these places where we put information, but people are like, well, I heard that we do it this way from this person. And maybe that person's gone, so you don't even know where the information is coming from. And it is literally a game of telephone. But there is a kind of person, there are human beings that love managing in crisis. And they will, because they find that they can be very useful. They're really good problem solvers. And they like that sense of there's a fire, I get to put it out, and I feel valuable to the business. Whereas when the business is very process oriented, there's a set of rules and guidelines about how to do everything, of course. And I heard you say, even for your business, not everything goes perfectly, even if you have really good systems. There's just much less chaos. So the range of chaos gets moderated quite a bit. And then you're constantly iterating and improving to try to hopefully get to zero, right?
Yeah.
But what did you find about the culture of the business, and could people change their mindset? Did you have to recognize that some people in the organization were more oriented to crisis, and that you'd actually kind of hired people that were good problem solvers versus people that were process oriented?
Yeah. So, well, it's hard to, I don't want to say this in a way that makes me undermine the seriousness of a global pandemic. I think that would be a bad soundbite. But the timing of COVID really assisted us in the culture shift that we needed to make to really kick it into the next gear when it came to the shift in our culture. So we started dipping our toe in sort of mid 2019 was when I had my epiphany aha moment with my 2-second lean kind of learning. And
good timing though, in hindsight, right?
Right. Yeah. So we were about 8 months, 9 months into kind of trying to grapple with exactly what you're talking about of like, okay, guys, like, we do value your problem solving. Like that is really good. But now let's leverage that problem solving so that you're not just using that every day to solve the same problems, but you're solving problems at a deeper level so that we can move on to a deeper problem, or we can move on to moving closer to that zero that you talk about. So that was, I think, that was that was tough, that 8 or 9 months of trying to kind of get buy-in and slowly kind of just feeling like we were building the bridge as we were walking on it, because we were learning at the same time as we're trying to teach our people and bring them along. And then COVID came and disrupted, as we all know. Like, I don't have to tell anyone how much it disrupted, but
you and I talked in COVID, I remember.
Yes, I had some bad days and some good days. But I heard this saying early in that, and someone said, never waste a crisis. And it was probably 6 weeks into COVID, so probably about mid to end of April of 2020. And I remember Dana and I were having a socially distanced meeting, because that's what we thought we needed to do at that time. And she looked at me and she said, I'm glad. We always try and say, I'm glad this happened, because try and articulate the learning from a tough situation. And she said, boy, I am glad we are going through this really tough, like, thing outside of our control, because it has just caused us to make decisions quicker, to rip band-aids off, to move towards being more lean out of absolute necessity, because we can't have the resources available to us to continue to do business the way that we were doing in February of 2020. So it was
interesting.
It was a major accelerant for us. And it really caused us to, like, where we thought that there was room for efficiencies, and that perhaps if we had done this at a different time, we would have gotten those efficiencies, but it would have been much more incremental.
Less urgency, right? Like there are less things compelling the change because it was kind of working, right?
Yeah. So that was I think, just a huge factor to us. And I think then on sort of your original question about kind of the culture shift and how do you get people to shift from one to the other, sort of from that like MacGyver, where it's like everyone is like celebrates
Here's
that.
your gum wrapper.
Yeah, to like literally, like my brother once fixed one of my younger brothers once fixed one of our dry cleaning machines with a pen cap lid. Like he was like literally MacGyver. I'm not even kidding. And brilliant
It's a
guy.
great
So
story.
yeah, but I'm kind of scared because I don't know where that lid is. Like I don't know what is it holding up that I don't know about. But that shift, like as we went through COVID, I think COVID without lean necessitated a huge amount of flexibility and shift in people's mindsets. And so it's kind of like an omnibus bill in a
Yeah.
political thing where it's like we want to put this through, and then we're like, oh, COVID is leaving the window open for us to make these changes. We're going to add these lean things onto it and kind of add like put that into the change queue, because people are malleable when they're in that kind of sense of unknowing. And I think there was a huge, like you talked about communication. I mean, I was recording videos almost every day, sending out emails to our whole staff list about a ton of our people were laid off at the beginning when there was that uncertainty. And so we just upped our communication and transparency early and we were going early and often. And I think that also, in retrospect, also created a more fertile ground for the change that was coming, because I think it built a level of trust that we had not. I think people trusted us, but it just took it grew those roots of trust much deeper, because it was such a hard time for so many people, and they really came to rely on having that transparency.
I love what you just said there about trust, is engaging your team in a trust exercise, kind of like, not the video that's circulating where the guy is on the chair and everybody's ready to catch him and he falls the wrong way. Not that kind, but the kind where you actually catch him. And that trust in the team, knowing that there's nothing intentionally being done to harm anyone, but sometimes we all trip and get splinters and paper cuts. And we have to care about fixing those things for sure. But I'm curious if that trust, if you think, I don't know, this is a little bit of a provocative question. Do you think that that experience of that COVID crisis and being able to use that fertile ground for this change, and the trust that, hey, things are actually better than they were before, which is a really great thing. Do you think that there's a way for a business owner in the future, say in your future, to understand that the trust needs to be built, and then you can reinvest in that pool of trust to say, we're going to do another kind of manufactured crisis in the business. We're going to acquire a business, or we're going to open up a new location, or we're going to do something else in the business that requires a stretch. How is there a frequency, do you think? Like, how often can you rely on that trust pool as a kind of permission to continue to push that envelope a little bit, to say, okay, this was a platform, I call it burning platform. It's not my terminology, but it's useful visual for me. And COVID was that for us as well. We're going digital. We are not going back to non-digital. This isn't temporary. It's permanent and full-time, and it is our future today. But then you need to let it settle and rebuild the trust, where people can say, yeah, this is different and arguably better. It's a different experience. What are your thoughts about being able to do that in an intentional way, like kind of create these moments of change and crisis?
Yeah, I think that sounds like the ideal way to do it. Like, instead of having this be something outside your control where you are not picking the timing like COVID was, to be able to kind of time and then communicate in advance a kind of the plan for that, and knowing that you aren't going to be able to control every aspect, but you can control some aspects, like probably the timing if you were doing an acquisition or something. Like, I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely a way to kind of keep people from settling too much, or from forgetting what that felt like, because I think people felt scared at first and they felt really worried, but I think as they saw the impact and the positive impact, they really did. I think that trust grew and they really did embrace it. But yeah, that intensity of a crisis sort of goes away, and then people get comfortable, and it can be easy to kind of slip back into that. And I feel like we've been sort of not intentional about that, but that makes me think more about being intentional. I think over the last 5 years since COVID, I think we've had a series of kind of things we haven't thought about in that way, but we did kind of like our core Alberta carpet and furnace cleaning, like our ownership, our future owners. So we weren't owners yet, but um, I was the only one who was really involved in both of the two businesses up until about 2021. And we had leadership in both businesses, and they weren't really together. But when we started the conversation of, hey, like, what does it look like for the four of us to buy these businesses? Dana actually was one that threw up the flag and went like, I know nothing about Paige. I know nothing about that business. It doesn't, you don't seem very happy about it most of the time. Doesn't seem like you're not.
I want to go there.
You're not selling it. Like, this doesn't seem like a great plan. And it certainly, I mean, we had leaders there who were working super hard and just not getting the traction, I think, that we were hoping to see. And the only thing that I saw was like, okay, well, what if I take the team that's really successfully started this turnaround at our other business and they start to inject some time into that business? So I feel like that was like stage 2. COVID was stage 1. And then having Dana and Matt and Jeremy kind of split their time and reduce the energy that they had for this business to move into our other business and just kind of learn it and kind of start organically just to learn the business and at the same time build process, invest in people. That was almost like, it was like a shock to Paige for sure, but it also was a bit of a discomfort for the people who worked at Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning because they didn't have the same access to the same people and resources. All of a
sudden they're busy, right?
Right. Yeah. So then we had to have people leveling up and stepping up, and then also testing, like, but guys, it's okay. We put systems in place. We don't need to physically be there to be able to have those things work well. Well, that was like, you can say that,
does
but
it really work?
Right. Yeah. You have to test it. And then I think since then, there's been maybe some smaller things that have come up where, again, it's kind of, again, pushed us to stretch and say, hey, this is the theory. We've been like, kudos to us, patting ourselves on the shoulder about how good we're doing. But now let's throw something into it. Last year when Jasper burned, about half of our business was relocated to Jasper and Hinton for about 2 or 3 months in our busiest season. Yeah, so we our HVAC cleaning and our carpet cleaning services were needed in some of the areas where there was a lot of smoke damage. And so our busy season is August through November. That's when it's like residentially in Edmonton, high demand, always kind of all hands on deck. It is kind of our mini crisis every year. The stress is high and everyone needs to perform and everything needs to come together to work because our slow season is real slow and we need that to kind of get through the lows of our business. So to have this opportunity hit at the same time as we would normally be ramping up in Edmonton to go, actually, we're going to scale back in Edmonton. We're going to take resources away. We're going to get to do this work. It's going to be a lot of logistics. It's going to be a lot of people being away. So there's a lot of like managing that and really making sure they're taken care of and their families are taken care of while they're away and having the systems to do that. And then at the same time, kind of navigating, well, what does that mean? Are we throwing away a season that's really important and it's important to cash flow? I mean, great, we got work in Jasper, but insurance work doesn't pay like residential cleaning work. So just all of these complexities. And honestly, our team just nailed it. Like our team just showed up not knowing, but trusting that we could figure it out and that they could be a part of figuring it out. And I mean, little things like we have a WhatsApp group that we use for the whole company to share before and after pictures of cleaning and intention. Its intention originally was to help create marketing content.
Yeah.
But our management team or operational management were like, hey, we're using that, but what if we use WhatsApp for the small group of technicians who are away? And that's how we communicate where people need to be for their jobs for
They
the
feel
day.
connected. Yeah.
Right. And it was so cool to watch. I wasn't actually in most of those, but I got to kind of see it from the outside. But to see what kinds of conversations developed and just how much camaraderie and morale was boosted by just something simple like a little better way to do a group chat. It's not like group chats were just invented last year, but just the way we were able to do it just supported that. And people went, oh, like, were you out in Jasper? I went, no, I went for a visit. I surprised our guys one day and found our guys on Main Street and was there and saw what they were doing. And same with some of the other owners and leaders in our business kind of popped in. But mainly it was a remote effort. And if you would have asked me, like, we had a similar situation in 2016 with Fort McMurray, and oh, that was like the worst business hangover ever. Just mopping up the aftermath of that, just the chaos it created in our company, the damage it did.
It cascades down. Yeah.
Oh, and it was almost traumatic to people. Like, it was because they didn't know, because it was change and it was crisis and it was scary. And this time it was change and it was a challenge, but it didn't feel scary. Like, it felt like inspiring they were inspiring each other. Like,
it's a challenge and an opportunity versus, some burden that had been thrust on everybody. Well, but that practice of change sounds like it's the groundwork, right? That you get a team that knows, that they understand they already are resilient. They don't have to, somebody always, my kids used to say, but I'm not brave enough to do that. And I said, you will never feel brave. Brave is an action. Yeah. Brave is the act of doing something you're not confident in having success at, or that you haven't done before. So it's an action, not a description of your attribute. You become brave by acting with courage.
Yeah.
But you have to practice that sense of we have this untapped potential. So I love that you had that experience, and then you got to practice the difference between the before and after. Must make you so proud of what you've all done.
Oh, and I feel like I would be remiss in a conversation like this not to give credit where credit is due, because I have to say, like, our four-way partnership is tricky. Like, they say, like, two people have one relationship and three people have three relationships and four people have six relationships, and then there's 2 on 1 and 3 on 1, and like, there's all this complexity. And that we certainly went through it while we were kind of on the lead up to forming our partnership. But I have to say, like, this is not a one-man show or a one-woman show over here. I really, really have to emphasize, like, Dana as our operations, our director of operations, is just, there is nothing, I could not do this without her. And Jeremy and Matt, in their role of kind of like the support and the technical side, they contribute on our systems and IT and really lead that. And that's a little bit of our secret sauce. Too. Yeah. It's hugely critical, especially just to enable a lot of the lean improvements that we want to see. Like, they're massively impactful in just leveraging the ideas of our people into reality. And I just look and go, like, if anybody ever asks me, like, what's the secret to success as an entrepreneur, it's like, find people who are good at the things you're not good at, and then make sure that you can't lose them. Like, us as a unit, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals so much more than 4. We are, like, so much better as a unit than as individuals. We really balance each other out. And that's I'm so thankful for that.
Wow. I'm inspired having watched the transition in your journey and those early days where you were not sure about what that next step was going to look like, where your parents were still involved and really pushing the business forward, but you guys were operators and trying to insert yourself into the business, and then going through that whole journey and the growth and stability and this incredibly cohesive brand that I witness in the market now. And just sharing that with you, I see the cohesion knit across your businesses and the pride of the people in what they're doing in the community. I have some fun questions, and if anybody listening has any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A box. So I have a couple questions. What is one thing, like as a leader, you need to be resilient plus a level, because you have to be able to pull yourself up from the doldrums and still act and perform and inspire and care. And it sounds like you have a fantastic, you've got children of your own, you've got a fantastic partner. What's one thing you do for yourself that refills your bucket?
Yeah. I'm a running addict for sure. So probably about 9 or 10 years ago, I just kind of started running a little because I wanted to do an obstacle course race. And someone said, you can run 5K. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. And I did. And I almost threw up. And I just, since then, I feel like I've just been pulled along a little bit by community. So I think what I went to get kind of an outlet and to kind of take care of myself physically. And what I found was just a community of people who are just inspiring and kind of always push me to new heights. So it's a sort of every 2 years, I've kind of leveled up my goals. And so I went from kind of 5K to 10K to a half marathon to a marathon to an ultra marathon to a 50-miler. And now I've got my sights set on death race, which is about 120-kilometer
That
ultra
is
marathon.
Well, I want to see the pictures when you cross the finish line in your first death race. That's an incredible aspiration. And I personally have no doubt that you're going to accomplish it, and in spades. So a couple of rapid fire fun questions. Yeah. Dog person or cat person?
Dog for sure.
Favorite pizza topping?
Oh, I make a pizza at home with prosciutto, pear, and blue cheese, and it is the best.
Yum. Yes. I want to come over. Fave genre of music?
Ooh, it depends what I'm listening to. So I love classical concentration is the only way that I get things done, but I'll listen to anything from pop music to rock music to whatever embarrasses my kids the most with the windows down.
Best favorite vacation spot?
Usually the place I was at most recently, which was Japan. So I am in love with Japan right now. Mm-hmm.
So you love travel?
Oh, I love travel. Yes.
And if you weren't a business owner, and I know this is a very difficult answer, but what would be your dream job if you could do anything in the world?
Oh, man. I was going to say, if I wasn't a business owner, I'd be unemployed.
Me too. Me too.
It would probably be just a different business. I feel like my old dream of being in that marketing space, I still love that space. And I spend as much time in it sort of in our business, but also I'm fascinated by how the sales and marketing piece works in other businesses. And so I'm kind of nosy, and I have lots of conversations with other people about it. And I'm confident that would be where I would find myself.
Thank you so much, Holly. I can't thank you enough for the insights and for your energy and enthusiasm. It certainly filled my bucket. It's been a long year. There's lots of things going on in the world. I know that you guys have already set the standard for your next 25 years, and I can't wait to be at your 75th birthday party as a business. I may have a cane or a walker or something, but I'll be there. And Justin, I'm going to turn it back over to you to close things out. I really appreciated you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. Thanks so much to both of you for your time Thanks to everyone who listened in virtually and to everyone who's going to be listening to the recording afterwards. Go check out Holly on LinkedIn at Holly Jones, or any of her wonderful businesses that she's been running and operating for so long. But that's it for us, guys. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to Holly and Angela. Happy Friday, and we'll talk to everyone here soon. See you later, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.